Okay, so now that we know how to add images to our objects and to our surface materials here, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the additional features and additional adjustments we can make to that image. So I'm going to click on the image container here, or image item, and if we look down here at the properties panel, we can see all kinds of settings that we can change. So let's go through them top to bottom, one at a time. And we can, of course, at the very top, we can enable or disable that texture on the surface. We can actually invert it if we want to invert it, but you're not going to see some of these changes here in OpenGL. The problem is that OpenGL doesn't support all the various sort of blending modes and things like that that you can adjust on your image. So oftentimes I will either go into an advanced setup here, our advanced viewport mode, and give it a second, and there it is. And you can see that we can actually show what it looks like inverted. We can also adjust the blending mode. Now, blending works if you have another image beneath the image that you have here to act as a second layer with which to blend, very similar to how Photoshop works. If we look at the blending options here, we can see add, subtract, difference, normal, so on and so forth, just like you would have in Photoshop. To give you a quick demonstration here, let me just take this image and I will drop it right underneath here. And now you're not seeing that image because the upper image here is overriding it. But if I go to a blend mode such as subtract, now you can see the image beneath is showing through. Look at that difference. Makes some very interesting designs here. So anyway, so you can adjust those. Now, another way of viewing this, besides the advanced viewport, is that we can go to Raygl. Now, Raygl will kick in the render engine, and I'll do full and give it a second. And now we can see that this is actually a rendering that is taking place on screen through the perspective viewport. Now I'm going to stop this real quick, back to my default mode. And default is definitely the fastest viewport mode. However, you can also engage the progressive render viewport by clicking that button and clicking the little arrow. And there we go. We actually have a render view that is happening through the lens of the camera. I'll back this off a little bit. And we can actually see all the blending modes and everything that's going on in this viewport. So that's the blending feature. Also, we can switch which UV map we're using. If we're using if we have multiple UV maps, that is, on this object, we can choose which one we want to use. We can change out the images. We don't have to be stuck with one image there. Now we'll just change this texture back. Anyway, we could move down and go to Anti-Aliasing, and you could turn that on and off, or you can blur your image a little bit by increasing the minimum spot. And we can also increase the anti-alias strength to 300%. And yes, you can see that it is blurring a little bit. So yeah, this is one way to blur your image. Moving down, we see we can adjust the low and high luminance values of an image. And this is very similar to adjusting the levels in Photoshop. We can also adjust the brightness and contrast of any image, and it's kind of self-explanatory there. We can just move those sliders left and right, or input any numeric value we want. Additional settings below allow us to invert any of the color channels, the red, blue, and green channels. Moving down, we see we can adjust the gamma of the image as well. That's very handy. And we can also select whether to use the alpha channel or not. Now let me go ahead and load an image with an alpha channel on it over the top of the existing image. So you can see the results. There we are. And you can see that the alpha channel of the image on top, the new image, is allowing you to see through to the image below it. Now, if I want to turn off that alpha channel, I can simply go to the Edge tab where it says Image Still and just uncheck Use Alpha. And there you are. Now let's take a look at some of the settings within the Image Locator Edge tab. So I'll just click on that, and as you can see, there's all these settings for adjusting the position of that image on your surface. Now by selecting the UV map drop-down menu, I can select any UV map that happens to be attached to that group of polygons. As I mentioned earlier, that when you place an image on a UV map, Modo by default uses that full UV coordinate to place that single image on. So if you want to tile a seamless image, you can simply use the horizontal and vertical wrap feature. Now by clicking on the little dots to an equal sign, clicking once on them, that will lock the horizontal and vertical wrap numeric values. So you can just click and drag on one of those edge sliders there to change the setting. And as you can see, we've tiled that image multiple times on that same UV map. And you can also adjust the rotation of the image on the UV map simply by clicking those little edge sliders on the UV rotation input parameter. And yeah, you can see it rotating.